welcome to the Friday Art Discovery Series. Today's topic is all about what you might want to consider in having a custom commission piece made for you. So we hope that we can delve in and give you some good information and inspiration and answer questions that you might have and kind of show you, like peel back and show you behind the scenes of what goes into creating a custom commission piece. So today's panel is very special. We have a couple, Judy and Gary Dickinson, and we'll talk a lot about Judy as the artist and Gary, her husband, who he does more of the business side, and so that's going to be a great perspective to share with all of our viewers. And then right next to me, we have Heidi Rosner, and yay! Yay! And as a disclaimer that I make with all these, we have so many amazing, talented artists in this show, and an amazing collection. I'm overusing the word amazing, but it's because of how I feel about all of you. It's amazing. But we have so many artists that we could choose from, but we think this will be a great panel representation to kind of show you more portraiture and also more landscapes and botanicals, that kind of things as well. So, and I also want to say that artists are always thrilled beyond measure when you buy something that's actually already created on their wall. But that said, we do know that sometimes people have a certain thing that they would like to have created, especially if it's a portrait of a loved one or a memory of a place they've been. And so I think this will be some good information for all of you how to really get what you want out of the process. So I'd like to start by having each Judy and Heidi just give us a brief background about you and how you got into art and why you love what you do. Judy mostly with figurative, although we do love your beautiful animal paintings as well. But what drew you to that, Judy?
So I've been painting for about 100 years.
She doesn't exaggerate or anything.
So probably some of you know the story, but my dad was the pastor of our church, and he was boring. And so the only thing we girls were allowed to do during church was to draw. And so that's how I started my drawing, and I would draw everybody's face around me. And then when I was 8, somebody saw me drawing so much and asked my folks if he could teach me how to oil paint. And so we'd stand out by the lake and paint the lake, and I just couldn't stop. I loved it so much. And I have just always been drawn, especially to faces, but I love to do anything. And so about most of the time my career had to be commissions on the side or paintings on the side, which I always did. But about, how many years ago? 14 years ago, we decided to work full-time in Africa. And so I started painting full-time to support us to be able to do that. So, so my more full-time marketing career has been the last 14 years. And that's why Gary's involved, because he's much better at marketing and business end than I.
And how long have you two been together?
50 years.
You met when you were 6.
Yes, I see that. And I hope that your dad was proud of you after you talked about being bored in his sermons.
He was sort of.
I think actually he would admit that he's boring, so he wasn't like news to it.
Well, but good things came out of that, so that's wonderful, Judy. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Ms. Heidi, a little bit about you, please.
I have not been painting for 100 years. I've been painting for 27 years, I guess, my second career. And I paint in watercolor. And it's because I started as a watercolorist, because I took a workshop at the Scottsdale Artist School to meet people when I moved to Arizona. And it happened to be watercolor, and so it launched me into this. I worked in other mediums, but watercolor is really my passion, so stick with what you're good at, right? And I do a lot of commissions because for whatever reason, it seems like my walls of my studio are filled with samples. People look at them and say, oh, that's perfect, except I need it bigger, I need it smaller, I need it vertical, I need it horizontal, I need two of them. So I paint a lot of samples. I'm fortunate enough that many of them will sell. And those that don't have probably sold 2 or 3 times in different forms at some point. So I'm always happy to be painting for me, and I love painting commissions.
And your previous career, which might, if she tells us that, it might explain some of her attention to detail, which is exquisite.
I am a recovering mechanical engineer. And on top of that, I'm just OCD a little, just a little, like just a little. I tend to plan things, but with watercolor, you need to have that because as I'll describe when I talk about my work, you get one shot with watercolor. You can't go in and add white highlights at the end. You can't, oh, let's make this a little lighter in value. You've got to save that light area and work reverse from dark to light.
Absolutely. So, and attention to detail is very important. Now, another disclaimer, not every artist is that detailed. And you'll find that if you do decide you want to have work commissioned, you're going to find the most important thing in that transaction is to trust the process and to trust the artist. Because the last thing you want to do is completely micromanage a program like this, because you're choosing that specific artist because of the reason that you're attracted to their work. So you want to learn to trust that process. And some of our artists, for instance, who might work in more abstract, they'll do commission work as well, but it's not going to be, for instance, when we're commissioning a portrait from Judy, we kind of know exactly what we want it to look like at the end. So there's an expectation level there that might be different if you're working with somebody who's a little bit more abstract or looser style, that kind of thing. And some of our artists, they each have their own kind of basic policies that you'll work with them on. Typically here we would ask for a deposit of 1/3 minimum. Some artists would like to have 50% down, and there's lots of good reasons for that. There's cost involved and commitment time involved. And some even want to get paid in full in advance. That's between you and the artist typically. And we are here to assist in any way. But again, we have some that will say, I think I know what you want. Let me create that for you. Let me paint it. Let me sculpt it as a sculptor or blow the glass. And then make sure you like it. But I'm creating it for you to your specifications. But if for some reason it doesn't meet your needs, then you have basically first right of refusal. But that doesn't really work in genres where you're creating something that's a very specific person or place and time. And that's kind of represented on the panel today. So those are just a few things that you might think about if you choose to, have a custom commission piece done. You gotta have a little trust and work with the artist in the ways that work best for them. But I think I want to talk a little bit about the paintings behind Judy. The first one to your far left, some of you may recognize this gentleman who's one of our amazing, got to use that word again, don't want to leave the amazing glass artists out, but fabulous, and I love them all. That's from Frank and Janice. Anthony Barbano is this exquisite painting behind Judy, and every year some of the artists like to do a challenge, and this year they got together and they all, a handful of them, maybe 6, decided, going to be 8, they're going to paint Anthony. So tell them a little bit about that and how you represented him here.
Yes, so every year Bruce, who does palette knifing and a much looser style, we sort of challenge ourselves to paint the same person. So we did an African lady one year, and we did Bethany last year. So this year I just definitely wanted to do Tom. And I never painted dreadlocks before. So anyway, so he consented, and then several of the artists heard that we were, Bruce and I were doing that. And so they said, oh, we'd like to do it too. So the more the merrier. So he'll be done in photography as well as different styles, and one will be a pen and ink. And so it'll be fun for you all to be able to see that. We'll show you the finished product.
Yeah, we did, Beth did a, in case you missed it, email from around the show the other day where she showed the beginnings of it. So we'll have to continue showing the progress on those.
Yeah.
And specifically, you did a background that represents Tony's work.
Yeah, I was trying to, at 1:30 in the morning, I was thinking of what I could do to make the background a little more interesting. So I was trying to depict, I don't know if I landed a certain way, I'm trying to depict his glass, which is so beautiful. And so that's what the squiggly lines are trying to depict his glass. It's not that he's up some psychedelic high.
It looks very much like one of his pendants. Maybe it was a chapter. I don't know. They're temperamental at times.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's a beautiful thing, and it looks just exactly like Anthony. And his eyes. There's nobody who has eyes like Anthony. So well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
And he's walking around the show going, I've never had people paint me before. This is amazing. So, so let's move to the ones behind Gary. And I'm going to ask you to tell that story, and then maybe Gary can chime in a little bit about how you guys negotiated and worked that out with our wonderful Frank Roshapo.
So every year, Frank, my most valued client, brings me the hardest project that he can ever think of. I think he stays up nights thinking of these hard projects. So this year, he brought his siblings, him included, and there's 7 of them. And so the first one is in 1958-ish, and then the second one is around 1978, 1980. And the same siblings and the same family staircase. And and particularly the first one was the hardest because it was an old black white. So I'm like, Frank, I can't do this. But he always has more faith in me than I do. So, on my computer. Oh, it's pretty back in his envelope.
Can you get that?
Check and see. I think we have the black and white. Gary will check. But anyway, but Frank is wonderful because he comes around and he encourages me, and so that's the process. It hasn't been varnished yet, but it's almost to that stage.
Did you paint this one first or that one?
I actually started with that one first for some reason, I think because it was a color photo, and I thought that might be a little easier. And then I went to the other one. So Frank, do you want to add anything?
Hello? Okay, Judy is being very humble about her work on this. It's far more complicated than just the black and white photo. The black and white photo, and there were 2 photos, because in one photo, the 3 children on the lower level, my two sisters and my brother, trying to, it slides down. I have a little nose. In the other picture, they were doing weird things. My brother was asleep. My sister had a finger up near her nose. The other one had her mouth wide open. She was screaming. So she took the second picture and put the 3 kids on the bottom row from the second picture. Now, the other thing is, yes, they were black and white. So she had to create colors. I talked with my family, my sisters, do you remember what colors? We got a general idea. So she created all of the colors. They may or may not have been close to what we wore at the time, but they turned out beautifully. I can't say enough about her work. It is phenomenal. This is probably the 5th or 6th commission piece, and I can't say enough about commissions because I think the artists here take them as a real challenge. My nose. And I love them because one other thing, very important, there is no tax, there's no sales tax on a commission. So it's like do 6, get 1 free, right? So this was the 6th one, so these are free. Except Gary took my credit card and, well, I haven't seen it since. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Heidi.
Susan, if I can just
Amanda
add
loves the challenge.
one thing, what's neat about the work that I do with the portraits, especially with somebody like Frank, so Frank would come up and tell me stories about each person, and you just feel like you get to know those people, and that's a very special part of it. So, and Tony's back there right now, if you all haven't seen Tony.
Come stand next to your painting.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Pull your mask down.
Isn't he good looking?
Stand back next to your painting and pull your mask down.
Isn't that great?
Crazy.
And one thing with Tony is he's kind of known for his sunglasses. And if you, can you zoom in on that, Beth? I don't know if you can or not, but the sunglasses hanging from his shirt have the reflection of what's going on around. It's fabulous.
It's
So
the reflection of the other artist taking the photo. Of
the other artist taking the photo.
their work.
That's crazy.
So it's a,
Tony said to tell you that I used one photo for his body and one for his head.
Yeah, use 2 different photos and put together that composition. It's incredible.
Oh, Judy's just in the way. Oh, I'm sorry. Now Gary will have the challenge of repeating it.
And I'm a very shy person, and I'm not used to the spotlight by any means, and I was a little apprehensive about being painted, and Judy really made me look handsome, and
You are.
I'm blown away by it, you know.
Awesome. Yay.
And I know everything about dreadlocks now, so if any of you have questions, I've already interviewed Anthony about them.
see, she gets super personal. So, okay, thank you, Frank and Anthony. Gary, I'm gonna come back to you in a little bit to talk more business. And about some of your other pieces that you've done. And I mean, Frank is absolutely right about the tax. It's a very interesting ordinance that we have, and it is a contract between you and us and the artist. And if you do a custom piece, we're very strict about making sure that it is in fact a custom work and not something that somebody just altered, because there's an ordinance that we print at the top of the document that we use. So you're signing a contract that it is in fact being created just for you, because if we as a business get audited, we have to provide all the documentation that supports the fact that it is a custom commission. So we take it very seriously, and these guys work really hard at it. So, okay, so Heidi, gosh, I love that you brought some amazing examples. I don't know where you want to start, but I think we should walk through, I mean, we could just start here and work that way. So I'll be your banner.
I'm gonna move this, if that's okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a watercolorist, and color is what draws people to my work pretty much right out of the gate. Color first, subject matter second, and then, whatever it is that they're interested in. But because of that, and because it's watercolor, I want to make sure I get it right for my customers, because there's so many variations in pigments. I can't go in later and make a green more blue, or I can't, oh, you know what, those flowers, I don't want them to be pink. Can I see them, like, can you make them orange instead? I can't change things after the fact. So I'm very careful about doing enough preliminary work so that I get it right the first time. So some of the ways that people commission me, a customer came in and saw this piece and fell in love with it. The composition, the story it told of the interaction between the agave, but her room was more turquoise and coral. This is more teal, so she wanted me to make it different colors. The problem was she was going back to her home in Virginia, and she didn't live here, and she wasn't sure what exactly the colors were. So I made a color strip. You can't tell, but this is cut in half. So I made it double wide. I cut it in half and I mailed half of it to her, and she held them up to different elements of her room, and she selected which blues and greens and corals she wanted to have in the piece. And the result, it's a little intense because it's a computer printout of what the painting looked like, but was much brighter than the original painting that she first fell in love with. She loves it. It's hanging in her home. She's come back a couple times for more work. So that was a fun process, but a remote process. So you don't have to be here in order for me to get it right. We can, in this day and age of cell phone photos and or mailing things back and forth, color samples, we can get it right, even if you're not here to be so specific with the colors. This commission was based on a piece similar to this that a client saw in my studio, and it was a much smaller piece, and she wasn't sure she wanted to have a road in it or any of that, but she was kind of vague, and she goes, I just want poppies, and I want it to feel like Provence, and I want it for my dining room, and I need it big. And so I started doing studies for her. I did 3 studies for this piece that I have here, and there's a 4th one that was the one that ended up being the piece that she kept, my gift to her. But very subtle differences in them, and I kept dialing it down until I got the right composition for her. So based on a 4x5 study, I created, I think this was a 36 by 50 painting. But I got form, fit, function, and the right colors, again, because colors are important in my work, all dialed in before I ordered the canvas. This piece is my next commission. Client came in the first weekend of the show and fell in love with this and measured and talked to her designer and came back to me, and this is what it's going to be. So I'm gonna stretch it a bit. Probably have a little more detail in it, but that's my next commission. This was a very, very special project by 2 of my favorite collectors. They went to Italy, and we had many and various conversations about travel to Italy, because I've been a long time. This is Zilster's right here that I'm talking about. And so we've been a number of times to Italy, and they were planning their trip, and I made a few suggestions about maybe where they want to go. And so they went to this town called San Gimignano, and they came back with their reference photos, and I had a bunch of reference photos, and they were thrilled that I was going to be able to paint something for them. They gave me kind of the size reference, and they said, well, we'd really like to have it painted as a sunset painting. I'm like, great, I can do sunsets, no problem. So I did the study, beautiful little study, sunset, gorgeous sky colors. And they came back and they looked at the study and they're like, yeah, I think we want blue sky. It's exactly why I do studies, because you can see it in your mind's eye, but until you see what it's going to look like, you don't know that that's really what you want sometimes. I'd rather be safe and get it all dialed in. This is actually a giclée of the finished product. They have the finished piece hanging in their home here in Scottsdale. And this giclée doesn't really do it justice because it's a spectacular piece. I love it. And you can see my engineering background in this one because there's like so many stinking windows and doors and balconies. And I kind of went a little nuts on the detail. But that's one of the signatures of my work. I tend to put a lot of detail in my paintings.
And the picture that we brought you was because it was raining almost every day that we were there. And
Yes,
that's
I
what
had
I'm helping.
cloudy gray reference photos to work with. So I created the sunshine and the shadows and all of that because it's a commission. It's not a photograph. This was a fun project. This is the size of the finished piece, 12 by 36. This was a fun project. A client came to me. This was a commission I had done for the St. Francis Winery up in Sonoma. And a client found me at this show who lived up in the Santa Rosa area. You can pass these around if you want, not that one yet. Who lives in the Santa Rosa area, which is in Sonoma. And she said, my family home, I've lived there for 50 years or 40 years or whatever it was. And we're selling it and I'm moving to Southern California. And I want to make sure that I have some mementos of this home because it's such a beautiful place nestled in Santa Rosa and it's gorgeous. And so, you got to slide it. So I was living part-time in Northern California at that point, and I drove up to Santa Rosa and I took a bunch of reference photos. This is the actual reference photo that she ended up choosing. From that, I did a little color sketch just to make sure I had the composition right, because this was also a very large piece, 32 by 41. From that, I did a full-blown color study over here, and then this is a photo of what the finished painting looked like. She liked it so much that she had me come back and do one of her front porch. This is a reference photo of the front porch, and this is what she ended up with for the painting. She had me do giclées of them for each of her kids. And so it's now kind of a family legacy of the family home. And it's kind of similar to what, it's a memory and it's a souvenir of your trip or a memory of your childhood home. It's really fun to be able to do that kind of project because I get very invested in it with my clients. Two more, I'll be really quick. This, I do a lot of poppies. Save this, okay. So I do a lot of poppies. That's one of my signature subject matter. And this was a very specific installation because the builder left these two very odd sized niches on either side of the fireplace. And oh, by the way, they weren't exactly the same size. So I did these two poppies that were inset into the stone. These were the studies that I did. Again, I wanted to get form, fit, function. I changed them up. These are photographs of the original paintings. And then this is the installation. And the paintings were off by like an inch in each direction, but you can't tell because of the separation. But it was a really strange thing that the builder did. And we had to have professionals come and install it because it's into stone and they're set in. So I had to order canvases that were like 4 inches thick so that they could install them with, it had a lot of issues associated with it, but it came out great and they're still hanging in their home and I see them every now and then and they visit and say, oh, we still have our poppies. So it's good. It's really fun to be involved in custom projects.
Okay, we're going to give you a little breather. So exciting. So if you travel or if you have a sacred memory of a place, it's a great way. I always tell people we can travel through art. So while we're still maybe staying at home for a while because of our situation, just get a painting of where you want to be and you can be there every day, right? That's my theory. So I would like to go back over to the Dickinson team. And I love how you two work together so well. I mean, Judy is the unbelievable creative. I don't know how you do what you do and how fast you do it. But Gary, you really help support the business side of it. And you're so good with people. So I'd love to hear how you're involved and how you maybe work through the business side of it. And then I think it would be really exciting to talk a little bit about your Africa work and your African paintings, and then we'll come back to your Africa project because they really kind of go hand in hand. But so take it away, Mr. Dickinson.
I kept wondering exactly what I could contribute to all of this. I guess from my standpoint, one of the things that I've always loved about the teamwork that we have together is that it's almost impossible to do a portrait project without and Heidi, this is probably the same with a lot of your work, without becoming friends with the client. And it's a relationship building. Obviously, as you know, any commission project starts out with a conversation, an idea. Sometimes somebody will walk in. These folks walked in with this photograph, and they came in order to get a commissioned portrait. So it wasn't like an afterthought. Sometimes people will see the work and they'll go, oh, you know what? We've got a photograph we'd love to make into a portrait. But these folks walked in with this, and then this is the finished product that will be delivered to them next week.
So beautiful. Yeah, a little easier than the Rashapos.
Yeah, so again, sometimes somebody walks in with a photograph, other times they just see it. We have one lady that we're talking to right now that when they saw Judy's work, the husband said to her, you know what would be great is if we had a portrait, both of their, all of their parents are deceased, and he has a portrait of his father hanging in their house. He said, wouldn't it be great to have a portrait of your dad hanging next to the portrait of my dad? So that's how that idea kind of formulated. And so we're talking with them right now, and so then there'll be a photograph that gets sent to us, and then we'll talk about size, we'll talk about composition, and then eventually get around to the commission price and that sort of thing. Judy will start the portrait, and about 90% of the way through the way we do our business, because it's got this right here has to look like both of them. It can't be close, you know. And so what we'll do, about 90% done, is we'll invite the client to either come in and view the painting, or we'll send it to them, email it to them in order for them to look at it. And that's a very, very important part of the process. It's not intimidating to Judy at all, because if the eye is not exactly right, Janice has been looking at that man's eyes for 104 years, 103. Yeah. And all Judy has is a photograph of him, and she'll look at it. Judy did a portrait of former governor of Colorado, Governor Bill Ritter, and Mrs. Ritter had the most wonderful time coming out and watching the process. And one day she walked in, and she was like, oh, that's amazing, that's amazing. And then she goes, but there's something not right about that eye. And she was right. And so then Judy was just very, very happy to just change a little bit of the white of the eye and make it right. This lady here felt as though her mouth was not exactly as she wanted it. And so she actually came in, Judy got her brushes, and while the lady was standing there, she sort of altered it a little bit until she was really pleased with it. So in portraiture, it's 100% satisfaction guaranteed. So we'll take a 50% deposit up front when the client is completely satisfied with the project, and we'll collect the other 50%. And our particular philosophy is if they're not, they'll get their money back. And not every artist does that, but you don't ever want to force somebody into buying a portrait of themselves that they don't like, that they've got to sit there and look at for the rest of their life. In all of our career, we've never had to enforce that policy. We've never not.
That you had to do that.
Yeah, which I never had to do that,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that's kind of the business end, a little bit of the process.
Can you share, the other day you told me a story that was really heartwarming about the story that was on the news in Denver about the woman who had started the painting.
Yeah.
Which one of you?
Yeah, you want to tell that story? Well, there was a lady in Denver, her name is Mitzi, and she was a portrait artist, and she had started a portrait of her mom and her son, right? So it'd be the grandmother and the grandson. She had started it, and then she contracted a very, very debilitating disease that left her hands completely crippled, left her body crippled, and she was wheelchair bound, and just lost the dream of ever finishing that portrait. I don't know exactly what.
She wanted it completed for his 40th birthday.
Oh, okay, yeah. And so anyway, so she got motivated with his 40th birthday, wanting to finish this portrait to give to him. So I don't even know how she found Judy, but she found Judy, and she asked her, said, would you finish this portrait for me? And so it was such a great honor. So I don't know if you know the Denver area. We were north of Denver, the little town of Brighton. They were south of Denver in Colorado Springs, wasn't it? Yeah, so a long, long distance. And so she came up once a week. She and her husband drove up once a week. They sat in Judy's studio. And what Judy said to Mitzi was, Mitzi, let me be your hands and you be the eyes. And so Mitzi sat there and they just had such a wonderful, wonderful time. You're just talking about art and talking about life and talking about kids and everything. Mitzi sat there and she goes, I think the red needs to be a little redder. And so Judy, okay, let me do that and see if you like it. So she stepped back, and do that. So that was just a wonderful, wonderful expression of love that grew out of the talent that God's given Judy.
What a blessing. Such a blessing. So on that note, you mentioned in your introduction, Judy, that you two have devoted the last 14 years of your life to really serving members of Africa. And you have funded that through your artwork. And in addition to that, you always pay honor to those people by painting portraits and sharing the experience of Africa. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Get one.
So one of the first years we were working there, we met this young girl who had gone through the genocide in Rwanda. Terrible, terrible story, but they murdered everybody in front of her. She was 4 years old, and they took her mother, and it was terrible. They cut her arms and legs off and left her to die with the daughter right there. And the daughter eventually came into work that we were helping with. And she was 18 by then, and she told Gary, just the words impacted me. She said, not only did I never have love, but I never had anybody to tell my story to. And it so impacted me, and I thought, well, that's a part I could help with, is to tell these stories. So that's when I painted her first, and then I started painting these people. And it's a wonderful chance I get to, when people come to my booth, I don't overload them with information, but if they seem interested, then I can tell them, about what we're doing. And so we started an orphanage in Uganda. We found a group of children, about 50, that nobody could really take care of. And we're like, wow, we do this. And so we do that. And then I did a portrait, a painting for a guy, and he donated a good amount of money, and he wanted it to be in Africa, but it needed to be in Rwanda. So then we're like, okay, so we went to Rwanda and we found these tribes. They're actually pygmies, and they were the poorest of the poor. So we've been able to work with them. None of them have ever learned to read or write in all their history. And we've had their children in school for about 5 or 6 years now. And, got them clean drinking water, medical care, teaching them how to farm. So some of the people that you'll see on the wall are those people, but here comes them.
He had to pick the largest one.
So I was gonna-
With a big frame too, okay. Oh, and you've sold quite a few of these this year, of the.
Yeah, we sold 3 at least of African, which I never thought maybe anybody would buy them, but it was just fun to do. But they speak to people's hearts, even if they haven't been to Africa for some reason. And these are the pygmy ladies. And the lady in the bright yellow, she gave birth right after we were there. And we were there with a few of the artists in the building. And she gave birth, and then sadly, about a couple of weeks later, her husband was murdered. So she's left with four children, but they're, as in a tribe, they all take care of each other, and so she's doing great.
I was just going to say that a collector from this show, or of this show, had come in last year and seen another portrait of this lady. It's very, very dramatic, very, very beautiful. She was moved to buy it, but she decided couldn't pull the trigger on it. She went back home and she was reading a story to her son about an African family and whatnot, and so it just began to grow in her mind that the painting that she had seen it wasn't the mother, but it was representative of the mother. And so she called me one day. She goes, "Please tell me that painting hasn't sold yet." And I said, "No." I said, "We still have it." She said, "Okay, it's sold. I'm buying it." And so she bought it and was just so very, very thrilled. And then since has become a donor to our ministry. Our income helps us to be volunteers for the organization. Everything that's done through our work is done by donations, whatever. But I just thought it was a touching story that lady that just had to have that painting, and it meant so much to her.
And she's helped this Clementine, her name is.
Yeah.
She's helped her since after her husband was murdered. This is in process.
I love that one. It looks like joy. Yeah. So that's just amazing. And the touching, the connection and the emotion in those reaches everybody. And it's so nice to see the work that you do being shared with others and those wonderful people. So yay. So you got too close to the speaker. Okay, so staying in Africa, we have some wonderful collectors who came to Heidi and Paul Reimer and Gideon actually last year and commissioned the next thing that you're going to talk about. We have all kinds of accessory noises here today. So I'll get out of the way. Hydrate, yep.
Okay, so these collectors, I'm fortunate enough to have done a number of projects for them. They go on a trip almost every year, and I commemorate the trip for them in one way or another. I've done some really interesting projects like Bruges, Belgium. I did tulips and windmills from their trip to Holland. I did Monet's Garden at Giverny, which is a beautiful piece. I should have brought a picture of that piece. And a couple of years ago, they took a trip to Africa, went on a safari, and went to several different regions actually. And when they came to the show that January, I think their trip was in the summer, and they came to the show in January, very excited about this next project. And so this is how it starts with me. These were the notes from when they were like bubbling over with excitement when they came into my studio. We really want you to do something to do. It was so cute. I loved every minute of it. But I took these notes in my sketchbook, just kind of outlining some of the subjects they wanted included in it, and and they wanted it to be both sculpture and paintings, and in the shadow box, which we've done a number of over the years. And so I kind of sketched up something real quick and took it home, went through, they gave me hundreds of reference photos. And I went through them all and kind of selected some. And then I came up with, because I'm an engineer in recovery, I came up with a schematic, form, fit, function, size, all of these were where bronzes were gonna go in the compilation. These gray areas were all paintings of different subjects and accommodations for some of the sculptures that they already owned from Gideon and from Paul Reimer, and some specs for new ones that they wanted, some bronzes that they wanted, and another stone sculpture from Gideon. So I spec'd it all out. I did, one of my quick color studies, because I do color studies for almost every painting I have, just because color is my thing. And they approved this layout and all of the subjects in it. And then I did this study for the main piece, which was 20 by 40. The main painting was called The Hunt, because they witnessed a lion killing a warthog. I'm sorry. I don't remember those animals, because Paul Reimer did the bas-relief sculptures for those. I just did the wide open plains with all of the different African animals in the distance. So that study led to this painting, and I'll have Susan pass this around. But this total installation is 42 by 52 inches, and it has 10 paintings, and I think 12 or 13 bronzes, not including all the different elements of the bas-relief pieces. But it was a wonderful project. I had to custom order the wood shadow box to be built. I had to custom order all the different boards for the paintings to go on. Paul created a whole bunch of new sculptures and bas-relief for just this process. And then when he was done with his and I was done with mine, he lives in Maryland, he came back here and we installed it all into the shadow box, and then with Doug and Jake's help, went and installed it in their house over the piano, and it was quite a process. I mean, the whole process, start to finish. I think we installed it in August of that year, starting the planning in January.
I think I was conveniently out of town.
Yeah, so I mean, not all of the commissions require quite that much advanced work, and I almost never go 9 months or 8 months in a process for a commission. It's usually on the order of 3 weeks to a month if I have a backlog, but that one took a long time. And just the painting part of my portion of the program was a good 2 to 3 months of just painting, preparation and painting. So it was a great project. And in addition to that, last year we had some other collectors come who had been to Africa and had seen some of my single African paintings in my studio. And they had just gotten back from a trip with their kids and grandkids. And they decided, we want some of that stuff too. So they ended up commissioning 2 shadow boxes with 10 paintings and sculptures, one for each of their kids with grandkids. And so each sub-family now has a memory of their, I think it was their 50th wedding anniversary trip. And so each of the kids has a memento from the trip that will last a lifetime. And now the grandkids will probably fight over who gets them when all is said and done. But they were very specific. They had elements of the camps that they stayed in and some of the activities that they did. They went hot air ballooning, so there was some hot air balloon elements. They did archery, the kids did archery, and so there were some bow and arrow things going on. And everything included in each of the box was specific to the family that they were going to. So they were very, very, very custom pieces, but I had a ball doing them. I have pictures of those too. If you want to come by my studio, I can show you pictures of those installations as well. But in addition to all of those projects, it opened the door for me to paint African animals and birds and wonderful things that I never even considered. But because this client had that kind of faith in me, I now have a new body of work. So it's a win-win. They get exactly what they want, and I opened some doors. So it was pretty fun. Yes, she moved from
primarily flowers and botanicals to animals and birds, and it's just fun to watch the evolution of all these artists. And I'm going to just kind of speak to the part that Paul Reimer did. I mean, you guys have done several collaboration pieces. I think we might have retired the shadow boxes. I don't know, maybe not. But
never.
But this project, what really was very involved, because they had, just like your other clients, they had specific animals that they wanted represented. So some of which Paul already had sculpted, but the others he made custom for them. And he's got a great collection of minis over there that are from working on this and other projects. So very exciting. And it's great. It's always great to see the artists really work together here on things like that. It's quite fun. And the creative energy is, you know, you can feel it. It's amazing when you walk around and you just feel the energy of all the artists, especially when they're working together. So I think it would be great to open up to some questions. If anybody here or online has questions, yes, please.
Yes, what is the name of your ministry?
The name of the ministry is called Olive Branch Ministries. And if you take Olive Branch Ministries and don't put a space between the two words and put .net, you'll have the website. So olivebranchministries.net is the name of it. Thank you very much for asking.
Yes. Can we have one from the online?
Yes. Is it harder to create a painting exactly from a photo or from a verbal description?
Is it harder to paint a painting from a photo or a verbal description?
Well, for me, the photos are a really good reference. Sometimes I'm fortunate enough to have my own reference photos taken with an eye towards making a painting out of something. Sometimes a client will just describe to me a general sense of what they'd like, and that's when I do a couple of different studies, just because it's a little less bounded than I need in order to move forward. I don't really have a preference one over the other. I like a challenge, and I love to paint custom pieces. So I hope that answers the question.
Very good. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Yeah, the African green, left line, green type plane. Where is that actually in Africa?
So where was this actually located in Africa? I mean,
That's Mount Kenya in the background. So again, I haven't been to Africa, sadly, but I went from some of their reference photos.
I think I saw them right after they came back from there, and they were just over the moon about the trip. So yes, Deanna.
I would like to speak to the painting that Heidi did for us, because the painting, the picture that I brought her was from San Gimignano, which was very nice. I really think I need this. Seriously. I mean, really. Okay. So the painting that Heidi did for us, we had taken from our balcony and the villa that we were staying in. And since Heidi had suggested that we definitely go to San Gimignano, and she had been there, we took her the painting or the picture, and she said, you know, I'd like to, this is the city of Seven Towers. And from where we were on our balcony, we didn't see all the Seven Towers. And so she said, I would like to move it just a fraction to show a few more of the towers. And like I said, it was pouring rain while we were there. And so we got blue skies. And so I love it because she added some towers in. Yeah, bless your heart for doing all those damn windows. But they look great. And we are taking a trip this year, so be prepared. And Jude, I would love to have you do a portrait for us. Ken and I just don't have a really great photograph of us that we could give to you to show. So
We take the photograph.
We provide the photography as well. So yeah, that side is covered. I'll see you after the show.
Good job.
We've got people for that, of course. Yeah. So fantastic. So, I mean, again, you can take yourself anywhere you want to go through the works of art, commemorate a memory. I mean, I know that, you know, portraits are really special, and
I just have another little quick share, but Julie right here was my neighbor before Keith was in the picture, but Julie was my neighbor. And she wrote a book called Grace, and she published it. And it's a woman's story. It's a good soulful book. And I read it, and she knew that I was an artist, but she didn't really know that I was an artist. Maybe she thought I was a dabbler or something, but she discovered that I was a real artist. And she asked me if I would be willing to paint the cover of her book. Now, somebody asked if I prefer reference photos or working from a story, and in that case, it was both. I was working from imagery that I created in my mind from reading the book, and some photos. It takes place in Oregon, and some photos that she and Keith shared with me about the river and some benches and key elements that were part of the book. And so I painted the cover of the book, and she used it for the publication.
Ooh, I want a copy of that. Yeah. And I know that you painted a poppy with the name Grace. Yep.
That's on the cover of my book.
Yeah.
Because my mom's name is Grace, and poppies were her favorite flower. So I have a display of the piece in my studio if you want to see it.
Yeah. So, wow, well, I'm inspired. I don't know about the rest of you, but I hope that you've learned, a thing or two about the inspiration and the process and the business side of custom commissions and just the joy of art and how you can really make it your own and collaborate with one of these amazing artists from the Celebration of Fine Art. And my deepest thanks to Heidi Rosner, Judy Dickinson, Gary Dickinson, and thanks to all of you for being here. And Heidi's studio is right over on the north tent, and near her is Paul Reimer, who collaborated with the African Project. Judy is over on the south tent on the back wall, about halfway down. A little more than halfway down. So enjoy that, and thank you all who are watching online. And next week is the melting point. It's all about the art of glass. So we'll see you then. Thanks so much.